Here's a real quick warning for you guys if you own the Advanced TX. Uh, Owning the Advanced transmitter, you could have several different types of quads, mainly the 501s and the 109 owners. You definitely have this transmitter. One thing that Hubsan kind of slipped in on us, and well, I wouldn't even say they slipped it in because honestly, they did not know. I started seeing a firmware show up, version 1.31.19, 1.31.19. This was only showing up on the 109s and the 501s, and anytime I saw it, there seemed to be a problem. So I was very curious about this new version because, for one, it doesn't fall into their protocol of their normal firmware numbers. It would normally be 1.1 point something. So I asked this question to Hubsan, what is this firmware, for a month? And they could not answer other than this is not a known firmware. And I think they might have been under the impression that it was Russian hacked firmware. There's a lot of that. And what they do is they just make modifications to the firmware, and then people use them. And those modifications, take out compass calibration from the normal firmware and change restrictions and things like that. So they had no idea what I was talking about every time I asked, what's going on? What is this new firmware? So the only answer I could get out of them was, this is an unknown firmware. So it took a little bit of time for the answer to finally reveal itself, thanks to a member in my group. And what it turned out is all the representatives that he spoke to didn't know, just like when I spoke to them. But he was fortunate to speak to a tech, which I don't know who that was, and that tech found out that the company that makes the advanced transmitter for Hubsan changed the LCD. The LCD screen is a new updated version. It's not anything spectacular. I hear it might be a little crisper, just a little better display. But in doing that, they had to create a firmware for that. So Hubsan has these outsourced. They have them made in another factory, and this factory put this LCD screen in and had to change the firmware. And as far as I know, they probably communicated this to Hubsan. Maybe they didn't, but I would assume they would communicate this. Either way, communication failed along the line, and Hubsan had no idea that this new transmitter, or this advanced transmitter, was being shipped to them with a new LCD screen holding new firmware. Took them a month to figure it out. We finally posted it in my group, and then it was like the next day they posted an announcement that this firmware version 1.31.19 is only for this new transmitter that has this new LCD display. How can you tell that you have this new LCD display? Well, number one, first thing is looks. Does this look any different than this? Look the same to me. So it's not appearance. There's no label on the back or anything. So the only way you can tell is go into your menu. But here's my warning. If you see this firmware, do not download it on your advanced transmitter. If you have the new LCD, then you already have the new firmware for it, and that will be the only firmware you can use for now until Hubsan figures it out and hopefully makes both versions of the old LCD and the new LCD compatible into one firmware. But for now, if you have this new LCD that has that new firmware, that's all you can use. And for all of you who own the advanced transmitter, my battery's sliding around here. If you own the advanced transmitter that has the old LCD on it, and you see this, oh boy, there's new firmware for the advanced transmitter, and you go and update it, this is all you're going to get. It will not work for the old LCD. You're not going to get any display whatsoever, and you're going to have to go back to one of the current versions that are intended for this LCD screen. Because when you turn on your transmitter, you obviously would like to see what's on there. The way to check what version you have is pull down the stick, long press enter, press down, go to show version, enter, and the version is 1117 that I have on this transmitter. So if you want to check to see when you get a new quad, if you want to check to see if you have the new LCD, which eventually everybody should be getting one once they run out of this stock, this is how you do it. Just go into your menu and check. And remember, there is no other firmware available for that at this time. And no, I'm not picking on Hubsan, but I know Hubsan. This transmitter is indeed made elsewhere, and I know the communication, the only word for it is it sucks. And they just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, get these transmitters, bind them to a quad, package it, ship it out to the customer. Have no idea that it has a new LCD or this LCD firmware. Even if the factory did not tell Hubsan, Hubsan should be checking this stuff. You should be looking at what firmware you're sending out. This manufacturer could be putting anything on there and messing up quad. So for my company, if I owned Hubsan or owned a company that sold quads, I'd be checking all this stuff. I would have a person or people checking all this stuff before it went out and made sure that my customers got the most current, best firmware package for their transmitter, their quad, what have it. And that way, if there was a change that I was not told about, then we would know about it, and I would make sure that the customers were informed. There should be a sticker on the back of the new LCD advanced transmitter that should be telling people this. As far as I know, there is nothing to identify it except for going into your menu. They need to put some sort of sticker, some sort of notice, something in the package to let people know, hey, this is different. You only have one firmware that works for this. Do not upgrade to any other version. Simple as that. But so far, all they've done is they've put out a notice a day after we figured this out. They put out a notice in their main Facebook group. Not everybody that goes out and buys a new Hubsan is in that Facebook group, nor do they go through and read that stuff, because now it's down at the bottom of their group. It's not a pinned announcement that shows up right when you get into the group. So basically, they feel like they did their part in making that notice on their Facebook group, and I can guarantee you it's pretty much forgotten as far as any new owners buying this for the first time are not going to know about it. So same goes here. Unless you stumble upon my channel or you're already a subscriber, this is the only way you're going to really know about it. And anytime you see somebody, if you are in Facebook groups and you help people, anytime you see somebody say, hey, I just did a firmware update on my transmitter, I turn it on and I get a blank screen, ask them what version they installed. and chances are they probably installed this new firmware that is not for their transmitter. So that's pretty much it. Just another Hubsan screw up, which we're all used to. But the important part of this video is not to bash them, just to inform you guys, let you guys know, all of you that help people, this isn't good information for you. If you're purchased one and you have a blank screen because you updated the firmware and you stumbled upon my channel because you searched this problem, well, here's your solution. Get that firmware out and go back to firmware for the correct LCD. So that's it, guys. That's my little advisement and warning, and take care.